Hello, families. I'm gonna give you all a few seconds to kind of get settled in the room. I can see that you all are kind of slowly joining, and so we're super excited that you're here. So I'm gonna kind of give it maybe about 30 more seconds as you join, so that we can make sure that everybody is here to hear all the good information that we are sharing today. Um, Today, I am joined by Carolyn Bassett, who really is here to talk to you about student success. And so I'm excited to have her here, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about what she does, but then really spend a lot of time of talking about academic advising and course registration. And so while she's talking, you will have the opportunity to ask questions, and we'll take those towards the end. As always, you all always ask me this, so I'm going to say it at the beginning, but I'll say it a couple more times throughout, is that all of our webinars are recorded and they're available on the parent website, the Parent and Family Services website, which is umass.edu/parents. It's also available on our UMass Amherst Families Facebook page, as well as our YouTube channel. And so you have all of those options as really good ways for you to review this content or share it with your students, or really any of those ways that you want to use that content. It's there for you to refer back to, and so we encourage you to do that. And for those of you who are kind of come back and watch this, who may be registered so you get the content afterwards, that's also a really good way to make sure that you get this information. And so really want to make sure that you know that. This is a part of our Family U-Chat series, and so we hope that you will continue to engage with us throughout the semester. We have a lot of really cool presentations coming up, and so we hope that you will join us. But that is really all the prep I'm going to do. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn Bassett, who is our Associate Provost for Student Success. And so I'm super excited to have you, and thank you for being here.
You're welcome, Jonathan. Thanks so much. I'm glad to join folks today. And we're at that point in the calendar where students are busy with midterms, and the days are getting colder, but they are thinking about next semester, and we'll have a chance to talk together about what's on their minds, how you can be helpful to them. And as we get going, I just want to start a little bit by introducing you to student success at UMass. So when I say student success, it can mean a lot of things to different people, but we actually have a student success unit at UMass, and it's a very active collaboration between academic affairs and student affairs. And in that unit, we house not only support for academic advising, but several other programs that might be helpful to know about. So this slide shows you kind of an abundance of possibilities when it comes to student success. We are the group that delivers a program called Smart About Money. We offer a free electronic planner. We sponsor the podcast called Trajectory, which is bringing student voices from UMass to Spotify. The Success Toolkit is a series of study skills opportunities for students, things like time management and active note-taking. You can see some other things that we offer, what we think of as great opportunities to make the most of the UMass experience. Domestic exchange, which is like study abroad, but within the US. Thought College Interchange, our partnership with other local colleges. Some of your new students may be in a residential academic program, so we've highlighted RAPS there on this slide. We also do special kinds of outreach to our first-generation college students, students who consider themselves among the first in their family to attend college, and also our transfer student community. These are two groups of students that we recognize we can be particularly helpful with as they navigate a big university like UMass. So you can see right there at the bottom of that slide that student success can be found on the UMass website, umass.edu/student success, one word. You could also Google us and find us, and find some of the other things we're doing. We connect with your students in lots of different ways. So I just wanted to set that stage, knowing that this is a conversation about how students can really take advantage of what UMass has to offer, and that we recognize we want to bring information to them in a really timely way, help them solve problems, help them envision new possibilities. That's essentially the stance that we have in student success. So I'll move to the topic that's really on the minds of so many students right now. Perhaps what brought you to today's webinar, which is really how friends and family can support the course planning that's so important for students. And I recognize we probably got some listeners on today's webcast who have new students. And so this is the very first time that those students are going to be more independent in how they strategize their course planning and then actually go through the registration process. And then we probably also have some listeners who have seen this process with their students once or twice, maybe been involved, maybe not been particularly involved, but might have questions about how to be supportive. So as I'm speaking about advising on course registration, I'll be speaking from those multiple perspectives. So I think it's really useful to think about when a student is choosing their courses, how is it different than not only what they might have done in high school, but maybe even what they did if your student is a transfer student and attended a different university before coming to UMass. And so when I speak to students, and maybe some of the family members on the call today, I might have met you in the summer, we really say to students, you are in the driver's seat. That every course you register for, you are the person registering for that course. And every decision you make about how you're going to progress through your courses, it's informed by good advice and advising and lots of information that I'll touch on today. But the student is really the one who, in the end, selects those courses, makes those choices, and it's really they are the author of that map of how they're going to move through their courses. So what I think family members can do and others who are supporting students can do is to recognize what we think of as agency. It's that being in the driver's seat. It's that the choices are the students and that the decision is the students. And we don't expect them to do that without guidance. We have lots of systems in place to help provide guidance for their selection. But we really do want to encourage them to recognize that they're the ones making those choices. We also know it's important to really encourage follow through, because this is a detailed process of understanding courses, understanding requirements, using the UMass platforms that are available and require their engagement. So like every college student, we help any individual student recognize that they're going to need to see the process through from start to finish, that there are some points in the calendar when this is particularly important, and there are some deadlines to do these things. And then we just also encourage conversations that foster curiosity. That one of the reasons students choose to come to UMass is that there are lots of different possibilities here in terms of courses. Certainly they may have things that they are particularly excited about or have never even heard of before or want to know more about. And it's in this course selection process that sometimes that curiosity really gets brewing and they start to see what's possible. So as a family member or someone supporting students, I would just suggest that you prioritize asking questions over feeling like you have to provide the answers. And I think about that as a bit of a mantra, because I too am the parent of a college senior. I've been through this with my son a few times. And I really think that my prompting, my own curiosity, my looking to him as the expert on his path, and then helping to unpack some things if he, runs into he wants to process this with me, or he runs into difficulties, like I can be a resource on how he might solve those problems. But again, this idea that the more questions I bring, that generates more, I think, fruitful conversation, and that he is the one who can identify where the answers lie. And he's, again, kind of in that driver's seat. And I'll also just say that we at UMass really feel like this is a shared project when we're trying to demystify the complex university here. I speak from the Office of Student Success, and lots of my colleagues in academic affairs or student affairs, but all across campus, there are individual instructors or people in academic departments or colleagues in the registrar's office. We're all on this project together to help UMass make sense to students, to identify what might be a struggle that they've encountered, a barrier that they need some help with. That this is really a shared project to demystify university life. We don't expect them to come to UMass with all the answers. We want to be helpful in as they discover those answers. And so I'll just highlight a few of the structures and colleagues that can help students with that kind of shared project. All new students have peer mentors in the residence halls. So those are peer leaders who are in addition to a resident advisor. There are peer mentors for new students in particular. I did mention the registrar's office. That's the office that sort of houses the infrastructure of how courses are selected and how classes are organized and where the data exists that students are moving on. The registrar's office has a live chat. They have a responsive staff. They take walk-ins. So there's lots of ways that students get questions answered. And I'll talk about a few specifics that students encounter as we move through a few more slides. And then I'll just also say that the structure at UMass is that there are advising centers in every one of the colleges. So if you don't currently know what college your student is in, that's something you can ask them. And there will be kind of a hub of academic advising for undergraduates in each one of the colleges. So I want to give you a little more detail about how academic advising is structured at UMass. You may have heard a little bit about this if you've participated in some of the other family programs, but I'll be sure to detail it for anyone who maybe hasn't encountered this before. So as I mentioned, academic advising is organized by a school or college. So UMass is made up of 11 different schools or colleges. Those are essentially parallel structures. Maybe the name of the program is the School of Management or the College of Natural Sciences. And every one of those programs serves as the academic home base for a student. And the advising team is kind of part of that undergraduate academic structure there for students. Many of our students, even in their first year, I identify specifically with their primary major or their program. So if your student has a declared major, they would be able to identify, oh, who are the people in my major, the folks who maybe send me emails or that I can meet with or that I would follow up with in terms of advising. There are also students who have yet to declare their major. If they're new, maybe they're in their, second semester and haven't yet declared a major. But again, they have a home-based college, and so the advising is delivered through the college. So again, primary majors create the advising structure, as do colleges for students who haven't yet declared a major. That student would be in what's called the exploratory track. And students would either be assigned an individual advisor, that's very common, or they might be assigned kind of a small team of advisors. So either way, they can see that information right in the front page of their Spire platform. Spire is maybe something that you've heard about speaking with students, the platform that houses things like courses and other fundamental parts of university systems. They can find out who their advisor is or where they'd find that advising team. And without a doubt, when we have a student who contacts us in the student success unit and says, I'm a little bit confused, who's my advisor? We can help them solve that too. So also on this slide, you can see secondary program advisors are noted. So let's say I'm a student with a biology major. But I'm in my 4th or 5th semester and I've decided to declare a second major in psychology and brain science. So not only would I have my primary advisor in my major, but in that secondary major, I could connect with an advisor as well. So I can be sure that I'm addressing the requirements and the curricular process in either one of those majors. So I've noted here second majors have advising, so do minors when a student decides to do a little concentration in a particular course, maybe that's 5 or 6 courses in a program. And then we also have certificates at UMass. Certificates usually cross the different boundaries of academic programs and allow students to do things in some interdisciplinary ways. And certificates provide advising for students in their planning as well. So as we wrap up the last 2 bullets on this slide, I'll mention that there is additional supplemental advising outside of this major and minor structure. And this is for students who have set individual goals beyond those programs. So if a student is on the pre-health track, like they want to become a physician's assistant or an optometrist or a physical therapist or a doctor, they would be able to get pre-health advising specifically that prepares them for the next steps toward those career goals. We also have pre-law advising, and that could be across all different disciplines. Students go into the field of law from many, many different majors and get advising to help them with that planning as well. And then I also mentioned that the Honors College and athletics have supplemental advisors as well. So again, students who have set some additional goals for themselves, and then they can get supplemental advising so that as they're mapping out their time at UMass, they get the pieces to fit together. And then I'll just circle back to something I mentioned earlier, that the registrar's office is the group that houses the course selection infrastructure. So students are using that Spire platform for lots of different things at the university. And this time of year, they're starting to think very specifically about how they're going to engage that platform for course selection. So I'll talk specifically about preparation for spring courses, go into a little bit of detail about that, but this is my last slide with detail, and we'll have plenty of room for people to pose questions if there are things that I've touched on you want to hear some more about. So let's talk about preparation for spring courses. We're here toward the end of October. As I said, students are moving through midterms, maybe they've completed some of those. And really November is the season when students are going through the process of selecting their courses in that Spire platform to put together the spring plan. So what do students do now? How do they get ready to be really aligned with this course selection calendar? One of the things that they can do now that could really eliminate some of the strain that I see students encounter is they can use that Spire platform to see if they have what we think of as holds on their registration. So if a student, for instance, was missing some fundamental paperwork for, say, our health services team, maybe they have some of their immunization documentation straightened out, but they didn't get it all straightened out in a timely way. That could create a block in that registration system on Spire that could get in the way when they go to register for courses. Or if a student has unpaid parking fines or something like that, these are the kinds of things that students kind of get tripped up with, like, oh, they've had a deadline, they missed the deadline. This is something pretty important to their UMass progress, and so it's standing in the way of registration. So right now, students can go into their Spire account and see if there are any holds on their system. And when they click on those holds, they're going to be able to see exactly, oh, what's the issue? Oh, I've got to pay those parking fines, and here's how I do it. The other thing that they can do now is really keep an eye on their UMass email. And students have probably heard this from other folks at the university, but we want students to get that information in a timely way, and the UMass email is the way that we push a lot of information out to students. So they can be watching their email, watch their email for a message from their advisor or from their college, and that will reference what we think of as the registration appointment in Spire. I'm going to mention 2 kinds of appointments here: registration appointments and advising appointments. So the registration appointment actually gives the window when the student can go into Spire and select their classes. They're doing some homework before they get to that moment, but it's good for them to know that in the month of November, all students will move through their registration appointments in Spire. And the way that it works at UMass is the longer a student has been here, the earlier in the month of November they get their registration appointment. The fundamental thinking there is that we've got seniors who've got to take some very specific things to graduate, and then we move through students based on where they are in their progression at UMass, and the brand new students will have a registration appointment a few weeks later in November. And then I'll also remind folks that we have what we think of as the add drop period. We call it that because it's the period after this pre-registration now, where students could add or drop classes right up to the beginning of courses. So courses start in the spring semester on February 1, and there's an add drop period right then that students could be adding or subtracting, or what we call swapping. Swapping is the best option there to move from one class to another. And I'll talk a little bit more about how students do that with advisors. So the middle bullet on this slide mentions scheduling an advising appointment as instructed. So again, you'll remember that students have maybe an individual advisor or a team of advisors. They've been told kind of what the timeline is, and they hear from their advisor or college about their steps to select courses. Academic advisors are the folks who know the progression of courses that the students would be following. There's probably some choice with that progression, more or less, depending on the program that the student is choosing. But those academic advisors are the specialists to help students think about how did I do in my first semester here? We're in the planning toward certain choices. What am I learning about what interests me and what my inclination is? Have I discovered programs that I didn't know existed before I came to UMass? Academic advisors can help generate all that conversation as students make their choices about their spring classes. But they'll also talk about more holistic planning. So is the student working on campus, and how many hours are they working, and how are they going to balance that job, say, with their spring courses? Or is your student maybe a sophomore looking at their second semester this spring, and they have a goal of studying abroad in the following fall? How do they need to pace their courses so that they're ready to go abroad for the fall? And again, kind of how the pieces fit together. Academic advisors are having conversations about this with students daily. Some of the tools that advisors and students use include the Guide to Undergraduate Programs. And that's what we think of as a classic kind of course catalog. What are all the courses that are being offered at UMass? What are all the majors, minors, and certificates? What is the required course progression for any of those programs? Students can start to read that and unpack that now before they actually get to that conversation with an academic advisor. So they've got some ideas about, here's the things that I am curious about, that I'd like to try next, some courses that jump out at me. Here's a course that I can see is in my course progression, and it makes me a little nervous because maybe I haven't had a course like that in the past. They might want to talk about that with their advisor as they're planning for spring. A lot of that information is sitting in the Guide to Undergraduate Programs, and students have time now to take a look through that. So in the Guide to Undergraduate Programs, they'll be able to find majors and programs. And sometimes we use these terms interchangeably. So we think about a major, this course concentration the student is committing to with its requirements and its upper level coursework over time. And we think about departments. Academic departments are usually mirrored by that list of majors, not one for one, but it's a way that students will often talk about their course choices. Like, oh, here's a major, I'm talking to people in this department, here's what's in the program that I need to complete, or how I might complete it, or choices that they make available to me. All of those are ways that students kind of frame this conversation about their academic pathways. The other thing I'll say about the Guide to Undergraduate Programs is it links directly to opportunities to explore the major and to what we call getting started. It's when a student wants to commit to a major, how do they do that? What are the steps to getting started in that major? So again, we built that system so that students can learn about their options, understand the next steps, find the people involved. If a student were to identify, say, I'm interested in kinesiology, which is a program within the field of public health, they could find right in there, like, oh, who offers advising in kinesiology, or what's the progress of courses on that academic pathway. So the other thing that I'll mention, as students prepare for this spring academic advising season, is that our registrar's office with the Spire platform offers what we call Schedule Builder. It's really a tool that's designed for mapping out the spring semester. How am I going to put my Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes together with my Tuesday, Thursday classes? How am I going to carve out the time I need to maybe participate in this club sport, or have this job in the library 3 mornings a week? They can use Schedule Builder to kind of move the pieces around their map to get things to fit together. If, for instance, a student is, let's say, on the electrical engineering path, and they know that here's a fundamental course that I need to take in my 2nd or 3rd semester, I'm going to lock that course into my weekly map of courses through Schedule Builder. I'm going to move other things around it to make sure it fits. And so these are some of the tools we provide to students, and that they'd be looking at together with an advisor in an academic advising appointment. So the other thing I'll say is that Spire has a shopping cart function, the way you'd find if you were like shopping, say, from Amazon or something. Students can put possible courses in that shopping cart. They're kind of sitting in there so students can move them around and come back to them at a later time. And then again, they'll have that registration appointment assigned to them from the registrar's office. That's the window of time where they're actually in Spire, adding the courses to create that academic advising schedule. So that's a list of some of the systems that are in place, the structures that students use when they go through academic advising. And I think it's helpful for you to know some of that language and understand the rhythms of what the next several weeks are going to look like for students. I do think that some of the most important things that we can do supporting students as friends or family members is to, again, ask them what's been interesting to them. Ask them what's been rewarding or challenging about their recent weeks or semesters on campus. I think that students come to this moment with very different backgrounds on how they have known about possibilities, seen themselves in those possibilities. They also come to these moments with a varied amount of comfort asking for help. And what we want students to really hear is that we've built a whole structure of people to help them. So remember those peer mentors in the first year residence halls, that registrar staff, the academic advisors, the instructors that they see every week who know things about the disciplines, the academic programs that they're interested in. All those people are available to help students kind of dig in and make their choices. So as we often say to students, especially in their early months at UMass, that asking for help and asking questions is actually like baked in to how we do UMass. So they can know that when they ask questions, that will not be surprising. There are people here who want to help them, and you become one of those people who kind of cheers them from the sidelines as they're moving through the UMass systems. And again, you can help them dig a little deeper, maybe if they encounter some kind of struggle. But in the end, how rewarding it is when they find those answers, connect with those campus people, take the next steps, and they start to think about, this is what my spring semester is going to look like. That student might make a few little adjustments at the end with some advice from an academic advisor. But by the time December 1 rolls around, most students will have a very good rough draft of what the spring semester looks like for them. So now is a great time to move to questions. And I think between Jonathan and I, we can sort of see what people have in mind, and hopefully I can be helpful with that. I'm going to turn off the PowerPoint so that we aren't looking at slides. And Jonathan, we can turn over to.
Yeah, that's great. So the first question, so again, I encourage you all to use the Q&A feature to ask any questions that you have of Carolyn. But the first question we have is, where can parents access the guide to undergraduate programs, or is that only through Spire for students?
So the guide to undergraduate programs, why don't I put, oh, I don't know if I can get to the chat.
You should be able to. If not, if you will type it, I can add it to it. I will put the link. You don't worry about the link. I'll find
Okay.
it.
All right. So, yep, we'll add that guide to undergraduate programs. I'm gonna sort out my controls over here so I can see these things as we're going forward. Great.
Yep. And I just added that to the chat. So the next question says, how do you find a secondary advisor for, say, a possible second major in history? Is there a deadline to declare a second major?
Great, good question. If a student wants to declare a second major or have a conversation about a minor or something, they can access those advisors. Many of the advisors on campus use a platform that we call Navigate. And a student would have used that, say, the very first time they registered for courses prior to entering UMass. They might use it to schedule a Learning Resource Center appointment, or they might use Navigate to meet with someone in their college. And if they're looking for a conversation that they can't find in Navigate, then they can just directly connect with that academic program or the college where the program is housed. But Navigate is the platform that sort of all in one place allows students to schedule lots of those kinds of appointments.
Okay, so the next question says, all first years must take a writing class. Are students guaranteed that class in their second semester, or kind of how does that work?
Yeah, so very good question. So for those of you who have a student in their first year, maybe they are currently in that college writing course, or maybe they're taking it in the spring, but those college writing seats are distributed out about 50-50 between fall and spring, so that yes, they can take college writing in the spring. We work really hard with the colleges to make sure that those courses are offered at many different times of the week, so there should be lots of choice about that college writing class. And a really good question for a student to broach when they have that advising appointment, like, okay, here I am, it's my second semester. I didn't take college writing in the fall. Should we plug that one in and kind of move things around it? Or maybe I have 6 different choices about what I could take in terms of college writing. So we'll make sure we add that in the advising conversation.
Great. The next question says, so there are 2 separate appointments that students need to be aware of, the registration and advising appointment, and can you describe the differences?
Sure. So the registration appointment means that they have a set time in that Spire platform to add their spring courses. It's like an appointment with the Spire platform. The advising appointment is really an appointment with an advisor, with an academic advisor. The registration appointment is assigned to them. They're going to be told, like, here's when you're going to get to go into the platform and add your classes. Maybe that's the 3rd week in November. Mm-hmm. An academic advising appointment is outreach from an individual or a college that says, hey, hop on the Navigate platform. You'll see all these different times that you could come in and meet with an advisor. And could you answer these 3 questions before that appointment, so we know some things walking into that advising?
So the follow-up question to that says, can a student do their registration appointment ahead of a discussion with an advisor?
That's a good question. And actually, it's the reverse. So the advising preps the student to make lots of choices. And then And in that later into November time, they're going to actually do the manual adding of courses through the Spire platform.
Great.
Students could do something like use Schedule Builder or put some courses in their Spire shopping cart to kind of be ready for the academic advising appointment, but it's the conversation that then turns into the actual like logistical steps of adding courses to a schedule.
Mhm. So the next question kind of builds upon that as well, and it says, do we think that students are comfortable with tools like Schedule Builder or the Spire shopping cart?
Really good question. You know, the feedback that we've had from students is quite good about that. These things are built to mirror platforms that students are in regularly. So when students are in, say, Schedule Builder, it's going to feel like other kinds of platforms they use. So social media platforms or shopping platforms or other university tools. Certainly they can request help and get help. I will say that's a really good reason to connect with a peer mentor. So let's say there's a peer mentor in the residence hall, or what we think of as a peer advisor in an academic advising unit. They're sitting with students who are maybe a couple of years more experienced than them. Those folks have been in these platforms for a few years. They're really good guides on how do I get through Spire? Where do I find my shopping cart? The other thing I'll just add is that it's a good use of the live chat that our registrar's office has, because a student could be sitting in their Spire platform, get 50% into it, and then realize like, oh, I don't quite understand how this functionality works. I could live chat with someone that can help me sort through the next clicks.
Absolutely. So, the next question I think is a really good time to plug our winter sessions. And so the question is if my student is not doing well in calculus, and they end up not passing, and it's a prerequisite, can it be taken over break?
Yeah, really good question. So the answer is it likely could be taken over break. A course as popular as calculus is something that would likely be offered during the winter session. I do think it's a really good conversation with an academic advisor or maybe their instructor, because they want to figure out what is it that's kind of getting in the way of my success with this. Have I tried some things? Do I need to try some different things? Could I get the tutoring that I need? And keep in mind that a winter session is really a compressed semester. So students are working what I think of as kind of like a double time schedule in the winter. It means that if you're taking one class, you can really focus on that class. You can move through all 4 credits of that course before the spring semester comes. But I think making that decision, especially if it's a new student, is best done with an academic advisor, an academic dean, or one of their instructors.
Absolutely. So the next question says, do you have any suggestions for students who don't really have a strong direction yet and want to focus on exploration?
Yeah, good question. So we know that students come to UMass. Sometimes they've declared their major and they're not actually even that certain or confident that that's the major they want to be in. So we have students who are exploring and they're in what we call the exploratory track. And then we have students who are very much exploring even with a declared major. So there are exploratory advisors in every one of the colleges, and that can really help students. We provide these online tools, things like the Guide to Undergraduate Programs, but I would absolutely encourage students to read the websites of individual majors and departments. They are highlighting things on those pages that really give good insight into the priorities and culture and possibilities with those courses and programs. The other thing students sometimes do is set up an appointment with a career advisor in their college. So again, the university has like a hub career advising group, and then out in all of the colleges, there are advising teams in career advising as well. So that sometimes helps students sort through if their questions have to do with like the professional path that this choice might lead to. I feel like it can be tricky for students, especially new students, to like make the mental space to think that far ahead. It's understandable to me that it's a little hard to think like, well, how do I know what I'm going to want to do in 3 or 4 or 10 years? And how do I know how these pieces fit together? So they don't have to answer those complex questions alone. They can do that through career advisors or academic advisors. But a new student will not need to actually declare their major until they're into their 3rd semester. So it's really normal for exploring students to use kind of their whole first year to take a variety of courses. And I will just say that we have a category of courses here at UMass called general education. Every student has to take some of those nicknamed Gen Ed courses to graduate. But another real benefit of those general education courses is students get to sample different departments while they're simultaneously solving and finishing some of those requirements. So it's okay if students are taking classes from a range of departments and academic disciplines. They're finishing up some things that will eventually be requirements, but they're also getting to sample programs that help them choose and provide some direction for their next stages. I think if a student is well into their sophomore fall, their third semester, and they're still feeling really undecided about a major, they can have an academic advising conversation and know that that's not surprising. The pieces don't click together in obvious ways for everybody. And then just the only other thing that I'll mention is that there is a program at the university where students can build their own major. And so not every new student would know about that. But we do have the possibility of kind of choosing courses from different disciplines. And it's called the bachelor's degree with an individual concentration. The shorthand for that is BDIC. And so the BDIC program is for someone who wants to build their own multidisciplinary program.
Well, you offered so many great resources in that one answer. And so I'm excited to hear you talk about that. The next one is actually about another resource that you already mentioned. And so folks just wanting to know when their students can register for RAP programs. So if that's only in the fall semester for first year students, or there are other opportunities to engage.
That's a good question. So the RAP program that includes a housing component is for entering new students or transfers. So there wouldn't be a residential possibility through RAP, but I'll talk about some other options right now for those students. I will say that the Student Success Group that sponsors the RAP program, we have a small number of courses every spring that are like a branch of the RAP program. They're just the courses without the housing. They're small courses, 30 students or fewer. They're infused with really active teaching strategies and in-classroom learning strategies. So if a student didn't get a chance to be part of a RAP this fall, they could think about looking for a RAP course in the spring, again, just the course. And the other thing I'll mention about housing, one of the things that's attractive to students about these kinds of special housing programs is, what if I want to live in kind of a sub-community within my residence hall? There are defined residential communities. So these are opportunities where people choose to live together, say on a hall or a couple of halls of a residence hall building. And what might bring them together could be an interest in language or an interest in culture, something about their own individual identity, where they're like, I want to live together with some people who share the same identity that I do. They might be interested in those kinds of things, and they can certainly read about those defined residential communities online, but all the resident assistants and all the staff in the residence halls know about those programs as well.
That's great. Okay. So the next question says, can a student register for courses before their November registration appointment, or should they just keep the courses in their shopping cart?
Good question. So the registration appointment is when they register for the courses. So they can't fill up their Spire schedule now. The courses basically are open for them to choose during that registration appointment. It's essentially UMass's way of sort of staggering the process so that everyone can kind of move into courses in a pretty orderly fashion, and those advising appointments help the students gear up for that moment.
So you answered this question before, but I'm gonna have you answer it one more time. Is what is the deadline to declare a major?
Deadline to declare a major. So if a student does not have any major yet declared, they need to declare that major midway through their third full-time semester. And if there's some particular exception that they need, like they started down one path and now they're not so sure, they should have a conversation with someone in their college advising office about that. But for the most part, students are declaring that major in their third semester. If they already have a declared major and they're just adding like a second major or a minor, it's much more flexible about when they do that. And they can find that process under that getting started function with regard to any individual new program they want to add.
So another question says, my student is on the exploratory track in University Without Walls. And they're still struggling to figure out what they want to major in. What are some resources that are available to them? And how can they best engage their advisor in that conversation?
Great. So these are students who are in the exploratory track, so haven't yet declared a major, but their home base, their academic home base is the UWW program. It could be that they find a program in UWW, like that individual bachelor's degree that they want to declare, but it's quite likely they're going to be looking all over the university at our, 100 different programs. So the advisor in UWW that they've been assigned is a really good person to help connect them with like, oh, who can I talk to if I want to know more about the history program or the chemistry major or what turf science is all about, because gosh, I never heard about that when I was in high school. The advisor is a really good referral mechanism. They can help the student formulate some like primary questions that they could go into that next conversation with. That advisor could also help them find like, oh, where are the peer advisors in those majors? Because I want to talk to somebody who's been a microbiology major. All those things I think are really good uses of that advising relationship in UWW.
So can you talk a little bit more about the advising relationship and how often can students expect advisors to reach out? And then also when is it appropriate for a student to reach out to their advisor?
Yeah. And a student should feel like they can reach out to their advisor whenever they have questions. And it might be that it's a quick email exchange, but it could be that they want to have a half-hour appointment and think more in depth with that advisor. There are majors that require a student to come in and meet once every semester. It could be that those programs have really found that regular touching base and moving through the semesters together is a good recipe for success. And then there are programs where it's just a bit less structured. So the student could absolutely contact that advisor once a semester, say, I want to check in about how my courses are going and what I'm thinking about for the upcoming registration season. That's really typical that a student is having maybe one meeting per semester. It could sort of taper off by the time they're in their like 6th, 7th, or 8th semester, and they're kind of solving problems more independently or just by popping in to see somebody without a formal appointment. But I think especially in the first few semesters, one meeting per semester is really common. And if students have additional questions, they shouldn't hesitate to be back in touch with that advising team.
So Carol, so the next question is some parenting advice. And so you talked about having a student here. And so wanting to know if my student is maybe a third year student, how might I get them to communicate with me about their advising and where they are with their courses and things like that? If they are maybe not being as communicative as I would like, or they're choosing other folks to communicate with?
Yeah, good question. So the first thing that I should clarify is that my dear son doesn't actually attend UMass because he was absolutely determined not to go to college in the town that he grew up in. So that didn't work from my end, but he's off doing great things elsewhere. So this is a good question. Like, you want your students to be moving along successfully, getting the things that they need. you'd like to be part of that conversation because this is kind of a team project sometimes. Not every day, but sometimes it really does feel like a team project for a family. I think it's helpful maybe to sort of step back and talk to the student about, like, what do they need from you? What do they picture is a really helpful role for you to have? You could even say, like, I went to this UMass webcast event, and one of the things they talked about was sort of asking questions and seeing you as the person in the driver's seat. What kind of conversations could you and I have so that I can better understand what you're doing in your driver's seat and see if I can be of help? I think one of the things that families also struggle with is the sharing of grades. And so it could be that as we move to the point in the fall semester where grades are going to come out in December, you want to have that conversation in advance if you can, as opposed to sort of tiptoeing around each other in December because maybe grades are out and did you get your grades? And are you going to tell your parents your grades? And what are they going to think about your grades? It can be easier to have that conversation in advance and say, hey, when December rolls around and your grades come out, they don't get sent to me, your parent, they just get sent to you. But I care a lot about how you're doing. And I wouldn't want to find out, later that, gosh, there was something I could have done to help you, even if it's just moral support. So I would encourage you to have the conversations when you're not like on top of the task, to have the conversations when you have a little bit of space from the task. The other thing I'll just say is that even when these conversations are going swimmingly with my son and myself, sometimes they're still not going exactly the way that I love it. But, at this point, he's in his 20s, and part of my job is to give him a little bit of space, but remind him, like, yeah, why is it nice to have someone in your, home court to check in with from time to time? I'm not going to be the expert, but I do know what it's like to care deeply about you and to cheer you on. That I've been doing for maybe 18 years at this point.
Thank you. So the next question is who advises on study abroad?
Good question. So there's a whole team of study abroad advisors in our unit called the International Programs Office. But we want that study abroad experience to fit really nicely with students' other academic choices. So they work with teams in each one of the colleges. So let's say a student's got a declared major, they want to go abroad. Through the IPO, International Programs Office website, they could see, like, oh, who's the contact person for these countries that interest me, or this language that I want to develop some expertise in. I'll start by being in touch with them. Oh, good, then they're going to connect with these people over here in political science. And here's the person in political science that knows a lot about some different study abroad opportunities. So my guess is in the end, they probably end up talking to more than one person, but IPO is the first stop for them.
Okay, great. So the next question is, my student is considering switching majors. What advice would you have? And what's like the best process to go through for this?
Yeah, good question. So switching majors is really common. Like nationally, probably half of all college students change majors. So the first thing I'd say is just help the student feel confident that this is okay. This is absolutely manageable and not at all uncommon at UMass or elsewhere. They do want to talk to an advisor in the program that they're aiming for. And that's probably going to take sort of a email exchange to kind of get in with someone that maybe they haven't yet met. Maybe it's in a different college. So, oh, I'm a student in a College of Natural Sciences physics program, but what I really am now interested in is architecture over here. So that advising team can help them find someone in architecture, or they could go to that guide for undergraduate programs and look up architecture, and it would say getting started, and I could figure out, oh, what do I have to do if I want to enter architecture? Here's some initial steps, and here's a person I could speak with. So a little bit of homework on their part, but the goal is to speak with someone in the program that they're aiming for.
All right, next question is, what is the average course load credit-wise?
Oh, excellent question. So the average works out to about 15 credits. If a student is in 12 or more credits, they're considered full-time. It's rare that a student who thinks of themselves as full-time would drop below 12. We don't recommend that because it can delay their progress. It could also have ramifications if they receive financial aid. So a nice, easy thing to remember is 15 to finish. If you're averaging 15 credits per semester, you finish your degree in 4 years. It could be that there's some semesters with 19 credits and there's some semesters with 13 credits. So 15 works out to be the average.
So is there a deadline to declare a second major?
There isn't a universal deadline to declare a second major. That's really dictated by the individual program. Some people will declare their second major kind of what feels like late in their UMass experience. They're like into their junior year, they're adding a second major, they've been kind of thinking about it, so they've got some of those courses already completed. I think that knowing the program that they're aiming for and having had a conversation with someone in that program is going to solve some of that ambiguity. So there's no universal deadline to declare the second major. They certainly need to do it by the time they're in their senior year so that all of the requirements have matched up and they're ready to be sort of assessed for graduation. I think it's much more common that people are declaring a second major like in their 4th, 5th, 6th semester.
Okay, so this one is I'm going to have you answer it both ways because I'm not sure if the student has declared a minor or not.
Okay.
But they are looking to get into business courses and they've been unable to get into them thus far. And so can you talk to us about the best way to get into those courses and an advisor that can help them, whether they've declared the major or declared the minor or not?
Sure. So there's a couple different ways that students pursue business at UMass. One of the best known ways is the minor through the Eisenberg School of Management. And there's a good website on the Eisenberg's web pages that talks about how the minor declaration works. And if a student tries to declare a minor in one semester, but all the minor seats are full, they could then turn around and try to declare it the next semester. So it is a program that has sort of a separate major declaration program. The other thing I'll just highlight is that we have lots of students pursue business through a program called Resource Economics. And they have managerial courses in that program. It's a bit more accessible, more courses, more seats. So if a student is struggling to get into that Eisenberg minor, I would think they might want to know a little bit about managerial economics through the Resource Economics program, something to just think about.
Great. Can you explain how a student would identify and register for courses offered through the 5 colleges?
Yes. So 5 college registration, there's an online site about how to register for courses through 5 college. The process is somewhat of a registrar's office process, but we do have an advisor here in the Student Success Unit. If a student's trying to make choices about what they're going to take elsewhere, or they have any questions about like, how do I get into those courses and manage that registrar's office over at Hampshire College or Smith College or Mount Holyoke. So our 5 college registration advisor, again, all that information is sitting right on the 5 college interchange website, can help with that. And if they got stuck, they could absolutely just contact Student Success. We would connect them with Sheila Brennan, the 5 college interchange advisor.
The next question, and we don't have time for too many more, but there are going to be a lot that are unanswered. And so I'm going to have Carolyn kind of give some contact information at the end or places that are good resources. But how early should a student start planning for their next semester registration?
You know, I think now is the time to certainly look on the Spire platform and see if there are any holds that could get in the way. And if a student is not yet in a declared major, now's a really good time to do some of that reading and have conversations with people in a department or maybe peers who are in those leadership positions to talk to students. I feel like the latter half of October is really good prep time to get ready for what's basically going to happen for say a new first-year student or maybe a sophomore student about a month from now.
All right, so I'm going to say, what is the last thing that you want folks to remember from their time with you today?
Oh, well, I want to just honor the really important role that you have as family members and supporters of our students. They're on such an adventure, especially our new students. Things are coming at them every day that they're trying to understand and make meaning of and take advantage of. So thank you for what I know you're doing out there, which is this combination of like holding them close and giving them space, and holding them close and giving them space. So the other thing I'll just say is remember student success. So you can find our email on every page of our website. We want to make it really easy for you to reach out to us with questions. And if you think, oh, this question isn't something that happens in the student success unit, that's okay. Part of our job is to get you to the place that does have the answers. So if we're your starting place, feel free to ask us your questions and we'll get you to where you need to be. The primary person who starts looking at those emails. She is a mom of 3 adult children, one of whom went through UMass. She has got so many answers. I ask her stuff all the time.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today. There are a lot of questions that went unanswered. So I want to let to always use student success as a resource. And Carolyn kind of shared their information and how you can find them. And then also, you can always come to Parent and Family Services. We will really make sure that you get to the right place so that you can get the information you need. We are doing another webinar with Student Success next week. So not exactly the same topic, but still the same area, talking about how you can support your student. And so that is happening on November 2nd. And so I encourage you to come and attend and ask your questions there. Hopefully not so many about course registration, but that's not what we'll be talking about, but it's going to be all about how to support your student. We also have a webinar coming up tomorrow about off-campus housing. And so I know that that's a really important question that you all have been asking. And so we have scheduled that one for tomorrow. And so I hope that you will attend. You can register for any of our webinars on our website. You also should have received an email about it. And this recording will be available on our Facebook, on our website, and via email. And so if you have questions, please email us at umassparents@umass.edu. Carolyn, anything else you want to say?
I think you covered it. This has been fun.
All right. Well, thank you all and have a great rest of your day.
Take care, everybody.